The Geneva Convention. What is the Geneva Convention? Have you heard of it? Some people have, and they've never really done any research on it to find out what it actually is. I know I hadn't until I had to do a speech on it for communications. So, have you ever been on the street and passed a soldier and said thank you for your service? Have you ever thanked them for what they do for our country? Do you know what they actually sacrifice and what they know they're committing to when they sign those papers? Do you know that if they were captured, what would really happen? See, it all comes down to the Geneva Convention. What is the Geneva Convention is the question. Well, the Geneva Convention comprises of 4 treaties and 3 additional protocols that establish the standards for international law and humanitarian treatment of war. What countries follow the Geneva Convention? Well, a total of 196 have actually signed the treaty, even though some of them are restricted on certain areas because they do not contain weapons of mass destruction or chemical weapons. The nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, well, Convention on Prohibitions or Restrictions on the Use of Certain Conventional Weapons may be deemed to be excessively injurious or to have indiscriminate effects on individuals. So that is the restrictions on the nuclear and chemical and biological weapons. But next we go over the prisoners of war. Prisoners of war, they must not be compelled to give any information including their name, age, rank, or their service number. They must not be deprived of money or valuables of any kind. They must not be given individual privileges. And they must not be held in close confinement except for breaches of the law. They must not be compelled to do military work or work that is dangerous, unhealthy, or degrading. Why does Al-Qaeda not follow the Geneva Convention? Well, in February of 2002, President Bush determined that Al-Qaeda terrorists were not prisoners of war under the treaty known as the Third Geneva Convention. Why were they not? Because they are not a state. So you have to be a state to be able to be considered part of the Geneva Convention or allowed to be a part of the Geneva Convention. So since they are not a state, they are not allowed to partake in it. In conclusion, the convention is long and complicated, but it is essentially a series of do's and don'ts. How to apply during conflict of protection of vulnerable and defenseless individuals in a wartime zone or wartime at all. The human dignity of all individuals must be respected at all times. Everything possible must be done without any kind of discrimination. Sometimes it is better to do the right thing and lose than to win and do the wrong thing. Tony Blair.